looking at the blood, and then I heard somebody walking upstairs.
Do you know the guy's name?
Yeah, his name is Lewis.
That's not me, that's not me, that's not me. Why did you do that? Oh my God.
If it wasn't you, then who was it?
I ask myself the same question all the time.
I'm going to kill her, and then I'm going to become her. Those were the chilling thoughts racing through a killer's mind as 29-year-old Lanell Barsock sat unsuspectingly in her living room chair, having her hair done by someone she trusted. What happened next was so brutal, so calculated, and so twisted that seasoned detectives would need counseling after processing the crime scene. The killer didn't just want Lanell dead, they wanted to steal her entire life, her identity, everything she was. And they almost got away with it. Welcome back to Cold Crime Cases. I'm your host, and today's case will shake you to your core. But before we dive into this nightmare, I need to ask, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Some people scroll by without caring about these victim stories. You didn't. That means you care about justice, about remembering these souls who were taken too soon. Subscribing is free, but it helps uncover the next hidden case before it happens again. Lanell's life. Lanell Barsock should have been celebrating her 30th birthday in just over a month. Instead, on June 16, 2010, her life was brutally cut short in the most unimaginable way. This beautiful, ambitious nurse had everything going for her, a successful career, a new home in Palmdale, California, and dreams of starting her own adult daycare business. She was the kind of person who lit up every room she entered, the glue that held her family together. Born July 27, 1980, Lanell grew up in South Los Angeles as the middle child in a tight-knit family. Her mother Bobby remembers her as quiet but determined, always busy, always helping others. Her brother Rome called her the peacemaker, the one who solved everyone's problems. School came easily to her. She was an honor student who genuinely loved learning. After graduating from Crenshaw High School in 1998, Lanell pursued her passion for helping people by becoming a licensed vocational nurse. But she wasn't satisfied with that, she had bigger dreams. She went back to school to become a registered nurse, working at hospitals while studying. Everyone who knew her said nursing was her calling. She had this natural ability to make people feel safe and cared for. The relationship that changed everything. In 2006, Lanell's life took a romantic turn when she met Lewis, a Haitian immigrant who had come to America just 1 year earlier. Their love story started like something from a movie. Lanell saw Lewis waiting at a bus stop after their ESL and nursing classes, and she offered him a ride home. That simple act of kindness sparked a relationship that would define the next 4 years of both their lives. Friends said you could see the genuine love between them in those early days. Lewis was hardworking, taking English classes and working as a maintenance worker for the city of Hawthorne. Lanell was building her nursing career. They moved in together, supported each other's dreams, and in 2009, took the biggest step of all, buying a beautiful 3-bedroom home in Palmdale together. But paradise doesn't last forever, and by 2010, cracks were showing. Lanell had begun confiding in friends about problems with Lewis. The talk of marriage had stopped. She was questioning everything about their relationship. And then she made a decision that would ultimately seal her fate. She started seeing someone else. The secret that sparked murder. This other man had given Lanell a secret cell phone so they could communicate without Lewis knowing. It was a dangerous game she was playing, living with one man while secretly dating another. Her mother Bobby would later recall a terrifying incident where Lewis discovered Lanell was planning to leave him, and he allegedly chased her car, trying to run her off the road. Police had been called to their home at least once before. Lewis had a jealous streak, and friends worried about what might happen if he discovered Lanell's secret. But the threat wasn't coming from where anyone expected. The day everything went wrong. June 16, 2010, started like any other day. Lanell had arranged for her friend Lorraine Austin to come over and finish doing her hair, a sew-in weave that they'd started the day before. Lorraine arrived around 10 a.m., and everything seemed normal at first. But then Lewis found the secret phone. The confrontation was explosive. Lewis had been told the phone was dead, with no minutes on it. But when he checked, he discovered someone had been paying for service, someone had been communicating with his girlfriend behind his back. The argument that followed was so intense that Lanell and Lorraine decided to leave the house just to let things cool down. They went to the beauty supply store, but Lewis followed them there, continuing the confrontation in public. Desperate to end the fight, Lanell handed over the phone, hoping that would satisfy him. It seemed to work. Lewis left, and the women went to pick up pizza and drinks before heading home. When they returned around noon, Lewis was there waiting. The arguing started again immediately. According to Lorraine, the tension was unbearable. She claimed she decided to leave and take a walk to let the couple work things out. That walk would allegedly save her life, or so she claimed. This took me hours of painful research, reading autopsies, police files, and listening to the cries of mothers whose pain echoed through courtrooms. If you feel safe watching from your screen, then please support what we do by giving us a super thanks. We really appreciate your support in helping us tell these important stories. 6 hours after leaving, Lorraine showed up at the Palmdale police station in a state of hysteria. She was covered in blood, shaking, barely able to speak. Between sobs, she managed to tell officers that she had found her friend Lanell dead in the garage of her home. The story she told was horrific. When she returned from her walk, she found Lanell lying in a pool of blood with a plastic bag over her head. She said she slipped in the blood when she discovered the body. She claimed she heard a noise upstairs, looked up, and saw Lewis at the top of the stairs. Terrified, she ran from the house and drove straight to the police station. Officers immediately rushed to Lanell's home, and what they found there would haunt them forever. The crime scene from hell. The garage was painted in blood. Lanell's body lay crumpled on the concrete floor next to her car, a plastic bag covering her head. When officers carefully removed the bag, the amount of blood was so overwhelming they initially thought she'd been beaten to death. But this was no random act of violence. Someone had tried to cover their tracks, and they'd done it methodically. There were no signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, no evidence of a robbery gone wrong. This was personal, calculated, and cruel. Inside the house, investigators found more horror. In the living room, they could see the outline where a large area rug had been moved. Rugs are often moved at crime scenes to hide evidence or to drag bodies. In the laundry room, they discovered blood-soaked towels. Someone had spent considerable time trying to clean up this massacre. When they used luminol to detect blood, the entire house lit up like a nightmare. There was a blood trail leading from the living room, through the kitchen and laundry room, all the way to the garage where Lanell was found. She had been murdered inside the house, then dragged to the garage. Inside Lanell's car, they found more blood and plastic sheets that were saturated with it. The trunk contained garbage, as if someone had been trying to dispose of evidence. And then there was the letter. The Dear John letter. On the refrigerator, investigators found what appeared to be a handwritten note from Lanell to Lewis. Dear Lewis, I'm leaving you for Ike. He makes more money so you can do what you like with the house. I'm moving out of state with Ike. That's why I gave you the phone. We're getting married, so just leave me alone. You can have everything in the house. I have been sleeping with him for 4 months. He's the one that pays my car note. So good luck in life. Goodbye, Lanell. P.S. I'm taking one of the TVs. The P.S. had been scratched out. To investigators, this looked like the final insult, a Dear John letter that had pushed a jealous boyfriend over the edge. Combined with Lorraine's eyewitness testimony about the fighting, it seemed like an open-and-shut case of domestic violence. Lewis was arrested that very night. The interrogation. Lewis was brought in for questioning, and detectives were confident they had their killer. Here was a man with a history of jealousy, caught in a web of lies about his girlfriend's infidelity, with a witness who placed him at the scene during the murder. But Lewis's story didn't match what they expected. Yes, he admitted, he and Lanell had been fighting. Yes, he'd followed them to the beauty supply store and confronted her there. But he insisted that around 12:30 p.m., after the women returned home, he left to go to Los Angeles to meet Lorraine's boyfriend, who was supposed to help fix his car. He claimed they went to several auto parts stores together, buying supplies for the repair. To detectives, this sounded like a desperate lie, the kind of alibi a guilty man concocts when he's been caught. One detective noted that Lewis was crying during the interrogation, but there were no actual tears. He kept saying, "You have to find the murderer," but police were convinced they already had. They noticed a scratch on his face, which they assumed came from fighting with Lanell during the murder. The autopsy reveals the truth. The autopsy results shocked everyone. Lanell hadn't been beaten to death as initially thought. She had been shot, once, execution style, in the back of the head from a downward angle. The killer had used a pillow as a makeshift silencer. This revelation painted an even more sinister picture. This wasn't a crime of passion, a fight that got out of hand. This was cold-blooded, premeditated murder. Someone had made Lanell sit down, positioned themselves behind her, and pulled the trigger. The investigation continued, and more evidence piled up against Lewis. The blood evidence showed someone had spent considerable time trying to clean the scene. Lanell had been murdered in the living room, then dragged through the house to the garage. The killer had tried to stuff her body in the trunk of her car but apparently couldn't manage it. Everything pointed to Lewis: the fighting, the jealousy, the witness testimony, the cleanup efforts. It seemed like a slam-dunk case. Until everything fell apart. When investigators searched Lewis's truck, they expected to find the smoking gun, literally. They were looking for the 9mm weapon used to kill Lanell, or at least blood evidence linking him to the scene. Instead, they found something that turned their case upside down: receipts. Multiple receipts from auto parts stores in Los Angeles, all dated June 16, the day of the murder. But it wasn't just the date that shocked investigators, it was the timestamps. Every single receipt showed Lewis was in South LA during the exact time window when Lanell was being murdered in Palmdale. Detectives were stunned and confused. Lorraine had told them Lewis was at the house when she left, and still there when she returned hours later. But these receipts suggested something entirely different. Could Lewis have murdered Lanell and then raced to LA to establish an alibi? Detectives who knew the area said absolutely not. The distance between Palmdale and South LA, combined with LA traffic, made it physically impossible to make that trip in the timeframe required. Still, receipts can be faked, timestamps can be wrong. They needed more evidence. Detectives drove to Los Angeles and visited every store on Lewis's receipts. What they found was irrefutable proof of his innocence: surveillance footage from multiple stores showing Lewis inside and outside the businesses during the murder timeframe. There was no question anymore, Lewis had been telling the truth. While someone was executing Lanell in her living room, Lewis was buying car parts 60 miles away, his every move captured on security cameras. The case that had seemed so clear-cut was now in shambles. If Lewis didn't kill Lanell, then who did? The answer would prove more shocking than anyone could have imagined. With Lewis cleared, investigators had to start over. But there was one obvious place to look: their star witness, Lorraine Austin. She was, after all, the last person to see Lanell alive. She was the one who discovered the body. She was the one whose testimony had initially led them to Lewis. And now, with Lewis's alibi proven solid, Lorraine's entire story was falling apart. Detectives began to look more closely at Lorraine, and what they found sent chills down their spines. Remember those 2 bullets found in Lorraine's purse when she first came to the police station? At the time, she'd given what seemed like a reasonable explanation. But now, those bullets took on a much more sinister meaning. And then there was something else that had bothered investigators from the beginning: nobody in Lanell's family knew who Lorraine was. Lorraine claimed she had been Lanell's friend for 10 years, that they'd known each other since high school. But when detectives interviewed Lanell's family members, her mother Bobby, her siblings, her close friends, nobody had ever heard of Lorraine Austin. Not one person. Lanell's mother Bobby remembered the day she learned of her daughter's death. She was at the police station, standing in the hallway with her son Jerome and a detective, when a blood-covered woman approached her and gave her a hug. "I'm so sorry for your loss," the woman said. "I went to high school with Lanell." Bobby had never seen this woman before in her life. Despite Lorraine's claims of a decade-long friendship, she was a complete stranger to Lanell's family. How could someone be best friends with Lanell for 10 years without her family ever meeting her, hearing about her, or even knowing her name? As Lewis was released from jail and the investigation pivoted to Lorraine, detectives subpoenaed Lanell's phone records. What they found shattered everything they thought they knew about this case. Lanell and Lorraine weren't just friends. They had been involved in a sexual relationship. The text messages between them revealed an intimate relationship that Lorraine had completely concealed during her interviews with police. But more shocking than the relationship itself was how it had begun and ended. Lorraine had lied about everything: how they met, how long they'd known each other, even the nature of their relationship. They hadn't met in high school 10 years earlier. They had met just a few months before the murder through a Craigslist personal ad. Lorraine had placed an ad in the "Women Seeking Women" section, and Lanell had responded. The relationship had been brief but intense, at least from Lorraine's perspective. The rejection that sparked murder. The text messages told a heartbreaking story. What had started as a romantic connection had quickly become one-sided. Lanell wanted to be friends, Lorraine wanted much more. 1 week before her murder, Lanell sent a clear message to Lorraine: she no longer wanted to be intimate and wanted to focus on her relationship with Lewis. She wanted to remain friends, but nothing more. For Lorraine, that rejection was devastating. But instead of accepting it and moving on, she began to spiral into a dangerous obsession. Investigators believe that Lorraine didn't just want to be with Lanell, she wanted to be Lanell. The DNA evidence. Imagine if it was your child, your sister, or your friend lying in that garage. Would you want their story buried under noise, or told with care? Subscribing helps make sure nobody's story fades away. It's free, and it keeps these victims' memories alive. When the DNA results came back from the crime scene evidence, they confirmed what detectives now suspected. Lorraine's DNA was found on bloody plastic gloves discovered at the scene. Her fingerprint was on a pitcher that had been used to clean up blood. And that Dear John letter on the refrigerator? A handwriting expert determined that Lanell hadn't written it at all. Lorraine had forged the entire thing, trying to make it look like Lanell had dumped Lewis for another man, providing the perfect motive for a jealous boyfriend to commit murder. The frame job was intricate and almost perfect. If not for those receipts placing Lewis in LA, and the DNA evidence left behind, Lorraine might have gotten away with the perfect murder. The motive, becoming Lanell. As investigators dug deeper into Lorraine's background, a disturbing picture emerged. This wasn't just about a romantic rejection, this was about complete identity theft and obsession. Detectives learned that Lorraine had been using Lanell's identity when meeting other women. She wanted Lanell's life, her success, her beauty, her career, everything. When Lanell rejected her romantically and chose to stay with Lewis, Lorraine decided that if she couldn't have Lanell, then she would become her. But first, she had to eliminate the original. The calculated execution. The murder was planned with chilling precision. Lorraine came over under the pretense of finishing Lanell's hair, just like they'd arranged. While Lanell sat trustingly in the chair in her living room, Lorraine pulled out a gun and shot her once in the back of the head. She used a pillow to muffle the sound, then spent hours staging the scene. She dragged Lanell's body to the garage, tried to stuff it in the car trunk, and when that didn't work, she came up with an even more diabolical plan. She would pin the murder on Lewis. Lorraine had witnessed the fighting between Lanell and Lewis that day. She may have even encouraged it, knowing it would provide the perfect cover for murder. She forged the Dear John letter to give Lewis a clear motive, then presented herself as the traumatized witness who had narrowly escaped the killer. It was a masterpiece of manipulation and deception. When detectives finally obtained an arrest warrant for Lorraine, she was already gone. Somehow, she had sensed that the investigation was closing in on her, and she had vanished without a trace. An all-out manhunt ensued. For Lanell's family, knowing who had killed their daughter but being unable to bring her to justice was torture. The killer was out there somewhere, free, possibly planning to strike again. Months passed with no sign of Lorraine. Then, the case was featured on America's Most Wanted, and tips began pouring in. The tips led investigators to the Central American country of Belize, where Lorraine had been hiding out. In January 2012, a year and a half after she went on the run, she was finally arrested. A month later, she was extradited back to the United States to face justice for Lanell's murder. Lorraine pleaded not guilty, maintaining her innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against her. It took 3 years for her murder trial to begin, 3 years of agony for Lanell's family as they waited for justice. But when the trial finally started, the evidence was devastating. The DNA, the fingerprints, the forged letter, the lies about their relationship, it all painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer who had tried to frame an innocent man for her crime. The jury didn't believe Lorraine's protestations of innocence. They found her guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced her to life in prison. She must serve 50 years before becoming eligible for parole. She is currently serving her sentence in a California women's prison. The shocking twist nobody saw coming. This case shocked investigators because the real killer had walked into the police station that day covered in the victim's blood, crying crocodile tears, and spinning a tale that almost sent an innocent man to prison for life. Lorraine's performance was so convincing that seasoned detectives bought every word. She played the role of the traumatized witness perfectly, until the evidence proved she was actually the cold-blooded killer. The woman who claimed to love Lanell had executed her in the most cowardly way possible, a shot to the back of the head while she sat defenseless in a chair. Lanell Barsock was just 29 years old when her life was cut short. She was a week away from her 30th birthday, planning to start her own business, looking forward to the future. She had so much to give to the world. As a nurse, she had dedicated her life to helping others heal. Some might judge the choices Lanell made in her personal life, but she never chose to be murdered. She never chose to let a dangerous predator into her life. She simply showed kindness to someone who responded with obsession and violence. The lesson. This case teaches us that evil can wear a friendly face. It can come into our homes under the guise of friendship. It can offer to do our hair, share our secrets, and gain our trust, all while plotting our destruction. Lanell welcomed Lorraine into her life with an open heart. She had no way of knowing that this person she'd met through a casual encounter would become so obsessed with her that murder seemed like a reasonable solution to romantic rejection. You watched this whole video, felt the pain, and maybe even shed tears for Lanell. But if you don't subscribe, this story risks dying in the shadows. Let's keep her memory alive. Subscribe to Cold Crime Cases, and help us continue telling the stories of victims who can no longer speak for themselves. If stories like this make you want to protect the innocent and expose the truth, then don't just watch, subscribe. That single click could be the reason another victim's story finally gets heard, gets justice, gets remembered. And please, leave a comment below. Tell us what you think about this case. Share it with others who need to hear Lanell's story. Because every share, every comment, every subscription is a way of saying that Lanell Barsock mattered. That her life had meaning. That her murder will not be forgotten. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed, I'm honestly curious, what's holding you back? Drop it in the comments. I actually want to know. Because victims like Lanell deserve our attention, our care, and our commitment to never letting their stories fade away. Until next time, this is Cold Crime Cases. Stay safe out there, and remember, justice delayed is not justice denied. Sometimes it just takes time for the truth to surface. Rest in peace, Lanell Barsock. Your story has been told, your killer has been caught, and your memory lives on.